The Buccaneers get some love and some shade thrown their way all at the same time. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. Credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you at least 3 days a week for the month of June, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We have people saying stupid things about Haason Reddick, and the Bucs have some players show up on ESPN's all-quarter century team, but more on all of that coming up a little bit later. We are going to start with something that you guys know I have been talking about for a little while, and I got some heat for it on social media, mostly on the new TikTok account. You can follow the show over there on TikTok at Locked On Bucs. But I'm going to stand by my statement while places like PFF and SiriusXM NFL Radio lie to you about something that you already know. And you know it because, we've talked about it. I've covered this before, but PFF dropped their receiving core rankings, placing the Bucs at number 2 behind the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, you would think, oh, that's cool. More love for the Bucs, except for the fact that the Eagles receiving core isn't as good as the Bucs. So this ranking was done by Trevor Sikkema. We all love Trevor. You guys know Trevor. I'm glad that I can consider him a friend. So maybe, just maybe, he's doing this so that he doesn't seem biased. But about the Philadelphia Eagles, Trevor said, quote, "The Eagles earned a team 79.1 PFF receiving grade last season and boast the number 1 A.J. Brown and number 17 Devonta Smith receivers in PFF's top 32 wide receiver rankings, as well as the number 2 running back Saquon Barkley and number 8 tight end Dallas Goedert. Throw in Jahan Dotson as an ideal number 3 receiver, and you've got a group that has a strong case for being the best in the league," end quote. When it comes to the Bucs, Trevor said, quote, "It was a coin flip between the Buccaneers and the Eagles for the top spot as they earned equal 79.1 PFF receiving grades in 2024. But Philadelphia's top pass-catching options all placed ahead of their Tampa Bay counterparts in PFF's position rankings. The Buccaneers win the depth battle, though, as Emeka Egbuka, Jalen McMillan, and Rachaad White make for the deepest receiving core in the NFL. Mike Evans, 90.2, Chris Godwin, 85.7, and Bucky Irving, 90.5, were all top 15 players in PFF receiving grade among qualifiers at their position in 2024, end quote. That's the thing, though. If we're talking about the best receiving cores, number 1, tight end and running back should not factor in at all. We are talking about the wide receivers. But beyond that, depth has to play a factor. If you want to just talk duos or trios, then do that. But if you're saying the receiver group as a whole, then the Bucs depth wins. I was on the Our Lads podcast earlier this week, and we talked about this. Greg, the host of the show, he brought the Eagles depth chart up while we were talking to put it out there in front of anyone that was watching. And he said that they don't have anything close to as reliable as the Bucs once you get past wide receiver 2. So if you want to compare Brown and Smith to Evans and Godwin, go for it. I can still make the case for the Bucs, but I can absolutely understand someone taking Philly's duo over Tampa's. But then when this team has Emeka Egbuka, Jalen McMillan, Sterling Shepard, Tez Johnson, Rakim Jarrett, and Cam Johnson after the top two, and the Eagles have Jahan Dotson, Johnny Wilson, Terrence Marshall, Aeneas Smith, and Elijah Cooks after their top two? No. Do not come to me saying that the Eagles have a better receiver group. Let AJ and Devontae go down for a month at the same time, and you tell me that you trust that that group is going to be able to get the job done. Tell me that you would rather have that group over Tampa's. Tell me you would rather have Jahan Dotson or Johnny Wilson taking over as the wide receiver 2 for more than half of a season like the Bucs had to deal with last year, and that you truly believe they're going to be able to handle business the way that Jalen McMillan and Sterling Shepard did. There isn't anyone that can honestly give this take. Eagles fans are going to try to tell you that they would take their guys, but they're lying, just like they're lying to themselves about something else that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But it wasn't just the PFF rankings. No. It was also SiriusXM NFL Radio, where Pat Kerwin and Jim Miller went through and ranked all the receiver rooms in the NFL, and Kerwin actually criticized what the Bucs had. He said, quote, "Why did you draft this kid," talking about Emeka Egbuka, "when you could have gone out and maybe taken a pass rusher? If you love McMillan that much, why'd you do it and pay Godwin? There's the problem." I'm sorry, problem? Anyway, Kerwin also said that he can't get on board with the Bucs roster building at the position, then proceeded to rank them 6th in the NFL. Jim Miller, for his part, ranked them 5th. First off, how can you not get behind a team that lost their top 2 receivers for an entire month? You lost one of them for the rest of the season, and you go out there and you draft the best player available at your pick to make sure that there's not a lull again. You are ushering in the next wave of receivers because Evans and Godwin are not getting any younger. So now you have a transition period where there is no drop-off. How are you not on board with this? How are you not on board with the GM in Tampa who has more of his draft picks taking snaps in the NFL than any other GM in football in the last 10 years? How are you not behind this? But show me 5 teams that are deeper than the Bucs at receiver. I'm sure they said the Eagles. I don't know which teams Kerwin put above the Bucs, but I'm sure he said the Eagles. Wrong. They probably said the Bengals, which is laughably wrong. Jamar Chase is the second best receiver in the league. Sure, absolutely. But T. Higgins isn't better than Evans or Godwin, let alone the rest of the Bengals group being above guys like McMillan or Egbuka. The Lions, okay, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's probably the 3rd best receiver in the league. Jameson Williams is really good at being a deep threat, but he's inconsistent and has been on and off the field, so I give Evans and Godwin the nod over him. After that, they're not as deep. The Commanders, nope. Cowboys, absolutely not. Vikings, the best receiver in the league does not equal the best room in the league. Look, you can call me a homer, you can call me biased, you can say whatever you want, but no one has legitimately been able to show that there is another room in the league better than this one. Every argument has been about the top 2 receivers being allegedly better than the top 2 in Tampa. Sure, there are plenty of number 1 receivers that are more athletic or faster than Mike Evans, but none of them have been able to do what Mike has done. And there are number 2 receivers that are better deep threats than Godwin, but none of them have been more reliable or have better hands. That's the thing. The rest of these teams in the conversation have more flash, more swagger, more whatever else you want to call it. The Bucs duo has consistently and reliably gotten the job done better than pretty much any other duo you can name since they formed, and they have championship rings. So if you want to compare duos, that's fine. we can have that conversation. But when you have these places talking about the entire room, all the receivers, there hasn't been one good argument, statement, or fact that would lead anyone to believe that there's a room in this league better than the Bucs. Period. Eagles fans say stupid things. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. NBA playoffs are almost over. It is the two greatest words in all of sports. Game 7. So there's one more night to deliver highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. One game for history. Will it be the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are the favorites at minus 300? Or will it be the Road Warriors and Miracle Squad of the Indiana Pacers at plus 245? Then you have the NBA MVP as the favorite to win the Finals MVP with SGA at minus 240. And then Pascal Siakam is second at plus 300. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So, inside the Eagles, that's the fan-sided Eagles website, they have a writer over there named Anthony Miller. And he dropped an article the other day titled, Haason Reddick OTA Opinions Said What Every Eagles Fan Has Known All Along. First off, that is a very wordy title. But Miller says in the article, quote, Philadelphia Eagles fans can count their blessings that general manager Howie Roseman knows when to let players go from the team at the right time. Former Eagles edge rusher Haason Reddick has been a prime example of that, having spent only 2 years in Philadelphia in 2022 and 2023. Since he has left the Eagles in a trade with the New York Jets, it has been issue after issue, end quote. Miller goes on to talk about Reddick missing OTAs, Gary Davenport of Bleacher Report labeling Reddick a loser in his winners and losers of NFL OTAs column, and Miller essentially talking about what a disaster Reddick is and how much of a genius Howie Roseman is. He ends his column by saying, quote, Philadelphia doesn't have to worry about Reddick anymore as the Eagles fans continue to watch him make mistakes after having a great opportunity here to finish out his contract and maybe get a new one after that, end quote. Miller also mentioned how Eagles fans are happy to not have to deal with Reddick anymore, essentially alluding to the fact that they're glad he was traded, but that's a lie. Because I went back. That's the great thing about the internet. I looked at the absolute social media meltdown that Eagles fans had when Ian Rappaport tweeted that Reddick was being traded. People reacting with rage gifs, crying gifs, WTF messages. One Eagles fan used a meme that said, life update, it got worse. People were using that dog in the fire, this is fine gif. One used broken heart emojis. So no, don't act like Eagles fans were glad to be rid of this guy. They were beyond upset. Now, it did all work out for them. They won the Super Bowl, but there were plenty of Eagles fans out there saying to give him his money and keep him. Then let's talk about the little digs at the beginning of that column where Miller mentioned issue after issue. Which of those issues were Reddick's fault? Please explain. The Jets knew when they traded for him that he wasn't playing under that deal. If he was, he wouldn't have been holding out in Philly. Nobody would have chosen to play in New York for the Jets, or for the Giants for that matter, over the Philadelphia Eagles if there wasn't a contract dispute. So if he was going to play under that deal, he just would have played for the Eagles. The Jets told him they would get a new deal done after they traded for him, but then they never did. And then they lied about saying that they were going to do that. So he was upfront about what was going to happen if he didn't get a contract extension. The Jets knew that. The Jets told him that they would fix that. And then yet they still managed to screw it up. So tell me again, please, exactly what issues has he caused since leaving Philly? Miller also had another column that I tracked down about Reddick following the first day of OTAs that Reddick missed when Todd Bowles said after practice, "I'm sure we'll see him one of these days." And Miller drones on and on about how much better the culture of Philadelphia is now that he's gone, and Roseman deserves all this credit and all these flowers and all this praise. And at this point, Miller sounds as if he's a jilted lover looking for reasons to bash his ex. This is personal in some way, shape, form, and fashion, because he can't seem to keep from talking about Reddick and how much better off Philly is without him, almost as if he's trying to convince himself as much as other Eagles fans. Here's what I know, and I've said it since day one of OTAs. Everydayers back me up on this. Reddick wants to be here. He had other offers. He picked Tampa out before last season was even over. He knew this team could be special and that he could be the one to come in and help. Missing OTAs was not a big deal. He was there for mandatory minicamp. He told everyone why he wasn't at OTAs. And it sure as heck wasn't so he could sit on his couch, binge watch Netflix, and use delivery services to bring him fast food. He was working out and posting his workouts. And he's already had plenty of compliments and praise sent his way by the coaches of this team for how he's helping bring along the younger guys, how he is helping teach them some of these different nuances to help them get better, and how he's been an extension of the coaching staff on the field. So be happy all you want, Anthony, and the rest of the Eagles fans that want to keep bashing Haason Reddick. Just remember, this whole season is a Reddick revenge tour. He gets to face all his former teams, and the Eagles are first in line. So don't start crying when the Todd Bowles defense that the Eagles couldn't stop without Reddick now causes one of your former players to be in the backfield all game long, beating the ever-loving snot out of your quarterback, play after play after play. And to go back to one of your other points, when you said Eagles fans don't have to worry about him anymore, yeah, you do. Because the Bucs are on the schedule in week 4, and you sure as heck have to worry about Haason Reddick that week. That alone, my friends, is going to be worth the price of admission. ESPN is showing some love. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, and I've done my airing of the grievances. All right, let's talk about some good things. Let's end this on a high. Let's go into the weekend with a little positivity, a little happiness, a little excitement. ESPN dropped their all-quarter century team for the NFL spanning 2000 to 2024, and the Bucs actually got some love here. So ESPN built a 53-man roster with the best players the league had to offer for the last 25 seasons. Now, if a player started in the 90s, they were eligible as long as they played into the 2000s, but it was only the production he had beginning in the year 2000 and beyond that would actually count. So there was nothing that happened in the 90s that had any bearing whatsoever into these selections. And I think that did play into one of the Bucs selections. But on offense, the Bucs were kind of represented. Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski were both named starters for the team as the top quarterback and the top tight end. Both played with the Bucs They were productive in those seasons for sure. They won a Super Bowl, and that happened after the year 2000. So we're going to do a half point for each. Before I move on to defense, though, I know I said I had aired my grievances. I have one little one. Little one. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't. I did have a little issue with the receivers. The 6 receivers named to the team were in no particular order: Calvin Johnson, Terrell Owens, Randy Moss, Julio Jones, Marvin Harrison, and Justin Jefferson, while Antonio Brown and Andre Johnson were practice squad. Where's Mike Evans? I understand that he has never led the league in a season in receiving. And I understand that he is woefully lacking, warranted or not, in Pro Bowls and All Pros. But Jefferson has been in the league for 5 years. None of the guys listed have the longevity or the consistency that Evans has since 2014. Not a single one. 5 of them have not won a Super Bowl. Just show a little respect to the most consistent receiver of the last quarter century, please. You could have thrown him in as a practice squad guy. I'd take Mike Evans over Andre Johnson. Prime Andre Johnson was that dude. But his prime was not nearly as long as Mike Evans' reign of 1,000-yard seasons. Just saying. But let's move on to defense. Again, happy thoughts. Great weekend. Let's do this. The Bucs get some more love with the selections of Lavonte David at linebacker. Derek Brooks was named the lone practice squad linebacker. And then Rondé Barber at corner, as well as a couple of other partial points for Darrelle Revis and Richard Sherman, who were both named as corners on this quarter century team. They were also both Buccaneers, but I think we can all agree that they are not on this quarter century team for their production in Tampa. About Lavonte, Aaron Schatz said, quote, "No linebacker over the past 25 years has dominated with splash plays quite like David. His 415 defeats rank 3rd among all players since 1991, behind Ray Lewis and Junior Seau, while his 31.9 defeats per season rank 1st. David also has 330 pass tackle stops. That would be tackles after pass receptions that prevent the offense from having a successful play. Derek Brooks' 275 is the only other player since 1991 with more than 40. It's ridiculous that David has only 2 total Pro Bowls or first team All-Pro selections, but we're not letting that keep him off our team." And I'm sure a lot of you are saying, how did Derek Brooks not make it over guys like Luke Kuechly, Bobby Wagner, or Brian Urlacher to be able to join Lavonte and Ray Lewis? And I think this is where the post-2000 stuff comes in. Yes, Derek Brooks won Defensive Player of the Year, Pro Bowl MVP, and a Super Bowl, all after the year 2000. But I think if I'm a Bucs fan looking at this, I would rather the nod go to Lavonte. Derek Brooks is a legend. He, first ballot Hall of Famer, arguably the greatest Buccaneer of all time. You guys know that I have him number 2 for those that listened to my shows last summer when I did the top 10 greatest Buccaneers of all time. Might do that again this year. Might wait a little bit. But, as Schatz pointed out, Lavonte's lack of accolades is absolutely criminal. Now, this quarter century team isn't going to help Lavonte when he's up for a gold jacket, but it at least shows that there are people out there on a national level that truly understand and recognize how incredible he's been since being drafted in 2012 and how criminally underrated and overlooked he has been over that same span. So even though they left Evans off of the receivers, it's usually things like this where the Bucs get no attention at all. Instead, they get 2 of the best players in team history on the defensive side, as well as a couple of partial credit players with Brady, Gronk, Revis, and Sherman. You could even throw Antonio Brown in there as a practice squad receiver, as partial representation. But I also wonder if Antonio Brown makes the 53 if he hadn't had his meltdown at MetLife while with the Bucs. Just food for thought. That's going to do it for this episode. Please check out everything that we have going on Twitter, at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. If you want to follow on TikTok, please do so. We're trying to grow that following over there. That is the same, at Locked On Bucs. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcast, and become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. If you want to support the show but don't want to be an insider, please leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.